Hi there. I am working on planting my tomatoes. You can see where I've already gotten started. Not sure if we're going to get the peppers in today, but Ohio weather, I tell you what, it is about basically the middle of May, and until the past couple of days, every week, we have had at least one night or two down in the lower 40s. And actually, just a couple, 3 weeks ago, we were still getting in the 30s. So, not conducive to be getting things planted that are tender, like tomatoes and peppers. So, I had held off. Well, then, yesterday, when I was planning this weekend to plant, yesterday and today, the forecast called for like around 90. So, welcome to Ohio. And then we're going to get rain sometime tomorrow and be hot and then start to rain, and then it'll be down in the 60s. So, I'm going ahead and starting to plant today, and my tomatoes have been on the porch. They are not happy with me. It was very hot there, even though they were in shade most of the day. So you can, hang on a second. So you can see some of them are very limp and unhappy. I am giving them some water as I'm planting. I had watered them last night. I'm planting them as deep as I can. You can see they're quite some of them were quite tall. I have either buried them in deep holes, or the ones that were a little extra large, I have tried to do kind of like a trench and then laid them down. And so we'll see how that goes. When I do that, I am taking off all of the branches that are where it's going to get buried. So you just snip those off. I just pinch it with my finger. Even with these gloves, my fingernail is able to just snap that off just as good as if I had a pair of clippers. So then this is going to get planted deep in that hole. But before I put that lovely little plant in the hole, I'm going to add a couple of amendments. So the two that I'm putting in for tomatoes are something both from Espoma. This is I don't have the bag out here, but the name is Tomato Tone. All of the Espoma products are organic. Well, I take it back. They do have a few things that are not organic, but the things that I use are all organic products, and they tend to have tone at the end of them. Like there's garden tone, holly tone. You get the idea. Tomato Tone is specially formulated to have a little bit of a slightly different combination in here that is what tomatoes most need. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is. In reality, if you don't want to buy a bunch of different kinds of things for your various different things, just get the garden tone for vegetable gardening. It'll be fine. It's not that big of a difference. But also with tomatoes, I add a handful of bone meal. That gets a nice little zhuzh in here, and then we're ready to plant. So I'm going to squeeze this out. The bone meal helps give a little extra phosphorus and calcium, which a lot of tomato plants need, so that you can avoid blossom end rot, which is when the blossom end of the tomato literally starts to rot. I have noticed that most frequently when I tried to grow San Marzano, which is a paste type of tomato. So I don't grow those anymore. I didn't bother last year, and I have several other varieties that work just as well for making like sauce kinds of things. So actually this is one of those. This is Napoli. It's a Roma type, and I don't know if I can get this out with one hand. So I'm gonna get that out in a second off camera. But anyways, a lot of the research I've been doing lately is saying that it's not as much that you may not have enough calcium in your soil, it's that your watering is inconsistent, which makes it difficult for the tomato plant to take up the calcium. So I try to be somewhat consistent in how I water. Obviously I can't control the rain, but I try to make sure that they're getting a consistent amount of water on either a daily or 2 or 3 times a week basis. And then I add the bone meal and the tomato tone. I will also give another helping of tomato tone once these really get going and put on some size. And well, they'll get a lot bigger, but yes, they're already quite large for seedlings. Anyways, so this is how I get them started. So give me a second. Let me see if I can get this out of the container. Okay, so she wasn't very root bound because the container was rather large, so a lot of the potting mix fell off, which is fine. It allows me to bury it even deeper, because the bonus thing about tomato plants is they will grow more roots along this stem. And I used to think that it was the little hairs that turned into roots, but I've been seeing some other people posting that it's not actually where those little hairs are, but it will grow roots all up and down that stem. So it's good to bury it, because tomato plants are going to get big, and you want to make sure that they have as substantial of a root system as possible to help support that large 6 to 8 foot tall basically shrub that they turn into. So as you can see, she's pretty flopsy. So I'm going to get a good amount of soil here around this guy. And sorry. So I'm going to get this nice and well tucked in. I will probably go ahead and put a stake on it to help give it a little more support. It's supposed to maybe storm a little bit this evening, and I don't want these flopping all over the place. They are still rather tender, and I don't want them snapping off. So that's basically planting our tomatoes. I'm going to get this a little better packed in, like I started to say, and then I'm going to put a stake on it and just tie it up in one spot to keep it stable. And then they will be ready to hopefully do their thing and just grow. So there we go. Well, yesterday was tomato planting day, and I will show you. I did get them all planted, so I'll show you that in just a second. But today is pepper planting day, and very excited to get these things out of their pots, and they are very excited as well. But first, let's take a quick peek at how the tomatoes turned out. I have lots and lots of different varieties. There's 3, in my opinion, basic types of tomatoes. Cherry style tomatoes. These are 2 different cherry styles. Here's another one. So I put the cherries kind of in their own spots and close to something that I can use in addition to a stake to help support them. So you can see remnants from last year where I will actually tie these to the fencing, because they will go up and actually probably over these fences as they grow. They get that ginormous. So I've put them intentionally in a place where I can use that as support. Here I've put near the trellis that on the other side has pea pods. This is another cherry type. And then most of the rest of them, I've got one slicer type right here. And for the most part, the rest of the tomatoes are all over here. And you can see they are much happier already than the way they were looking yesterday. They were not happy with sitting on the porch yesterday. I've tucked one back here because the broccoli will not last forever. In fact, I'm anticipating that this might bolt before it even really gets going. They don't even really have much of a broccoli head on them yet, so we'll see. But I figured that probably will go sooner than later, and that tomato will get sun from that direction there, because that is west. So, and it is getting a little bit of sun now, which actually it's probably better that it's a little bit protected. It's going to be super hot today for being May. So anyways, same thing here with the lettuces. They won't last forever, but I might be able to stretch them into the warmer season with however long this broccoli stays. And as this tomato plant grows, it will get quite large and maybe help shade that if I am selectively harvesting this lettuce, it might be able to stretch longer into the season being underneath that tomato plant. So tomatoes are in, they're looking happier. As long as we can make it through today's heat wave, then we'll have a few days of colder weather to really let them kind of set in. I have staked pretty much everything, even the ones that were kind of smaller. Roma tomatoes, what is up with you? They seem so traumatic as seedlings. So hopefully that one survives and grows and thrives. We'll see. So hopefully they survive whatever storm we get today. and then can really get going. You can see one of these even already has a little tomato on it. I should probably pop that off and let the plant focus on growing, because that's not going to get much bigger. It's just going to drain resources. So anyways, peppers. Peppers are all going to be over here, and they are in a little bit smaller pots. I started them a smidge later this year than last year, so that they would hopefully not get too big and too unhappy, and it worked out better, but they are still blooming. Some of them have started fruiting. Look over here. I was organizing all these in their spots, and I actually have poblano peppers on this poblano plant. Look at that. Is that focusing? Let me see if I can get... Look at that guy. So I'm going to let them go. My theory is if the plant can't support the blooms or the fruits at this point, it will drop them. So, and they're not completely stressed out. The plants still look very healthy, but they are definitely, their roots have filled their pots. So they are ready to get planted. So what I'm going to do is, just like you plant pretty much anything else, you dig your hole, loosen up the roots. If they look like this, you can see how they're kind of going around the pot. So they've developed a circular memory. We want to break that so that they'll go down into the ground and out instead of just keep circling, and that would make them very root bound and be detrimental to the health of the plant. And stick it in there, fill it back in, you're good to go. Now, a couple of other things that I do is I'm going to add into that hole a little bit of a fertilizer. It's organic. It's from a company called Espoma. It's called Biotone Plus Starter Fertilizer, and I'm just going to take a handful like that, drop it in there. I'm also going to take a small handful of bone meal. It adds some phosphorus and calcium, so just a pinch, maybe a tablespoon. Drop that in there, and then I'll kind of mix that in so that it's not right up against the bare roots. Then I'll take the plant and I'll just gently tease these roots to kind of break them up a little bit so that they're not continuing that circling around what was the pot. I'll look at the bottom, and if that's matted up, give that a little bit of a tease. We don't want to break the roots. I mean, a couple might get broken. You can see there's a couple on the ground there. We just want to loosen them so that they stop circling around, and then that way they will be more likely to go out into the soil and make a really strong plant. Now, with pepper plants, just like tomato plants, you don't want leaves too close to the soil, so I'm going to just snap off these little branches that are closest to the soil. I want to leave at this point 3 or 4 inches. Ultimately, when the plant gets bigger, we'll probably want 5 or 6 inches from the soil level. But I don't want to stress it out too much because it's going to be hot today. They're just coming out of their pots, they're just getting planted. And now we're ready to plant it down. We can plant it a little bit lower than it was in the pot. We can bury the stem just a little bit with a pepper. You can do that, but you don't want to bury too much of the stem. And I'm not sure how that's showing up, but so I planted it just a little deep. You don't want to plant it deep though, like tomatoes. Peppers are not necessarily going to grow roots off of the part of the stem you bury, and if you plant too much of the stem, then you can get other issues where funguses rot. The stem can get too wet, so you don't want to do that. So basically, there she is. Now we're just going to put the tag, because I grow a lot of different kinds of peppers, just like I grow a lot of different kinds of tomatoes. I want to be able to know later which ones I grew where and how they did. She's done, ready to go. The last thing I'll do once I get everything planted is I will water all these in, just give everybody a good soak, and then just keep an eye on them today to make sure that they don't get too sad from the heat. I may water again this evening, because then in true Ohio fashion, we are going to have supposed to have maybe thunderstorms this afternoon, evening, and then tomorrow the temperature will drop down and back into the 60s during the day and high 40s overnight. So that's going to shock them maybe a little bit, but it should only be for an hour or two. And then the rest of the forecast is well into the 50s or 60s for both highs and lows or above. So we should be good to go to just grow and thrive and produce lots and lots of good things to eat. So there you have it. That's how you plant your stuff. Whether you grow your own from seed or whether you buy them from, hopefully I would recommend a local nursery. You will be much more likely to get stronger, healthier plants, as well as varieties that do best in your area. Just as a tip, big box stores are great if that's what you have, but they tend to, oftentimes you may pay a little more per seedling, and they are national companies, so they may or may not bring in varieties that are best for where you live. So do your research and support your local nurseries if you can, or even better yet, find somebody like me who grew some extras and buy from them. Thanks for joining me here in Aunt Susan's garden.